The Daily Scrum is something that some Scrum teams do brilliantly and others not so much. In this video, I'm going to share 10 tips on how to get more out of the Daily Scrum. My name's Steve Woolston and I'm the lead trainer and Agile coach at Leantree, providing transformative business agility services. Now, tip 1 is to remember what the event is for. The Daily Scrum is for the team to inspect progress towards the sprint goal and to adapt the sprint backlog accordingly. It's time boxed to 15 minutes to focus on that goal and avoid drifting into other conversations. Now, that goal for the event presupposes having the sprint goal in mind as the bullseye the team is constantly correcting its aim for. If you're just reviewing the status of work on the backlog without having the sprint goal in mind, and whether you're on track to achieve the sprint goal or not, you're probably not going to get the best out of the event. Tip 2, be mindful of what the event is not for. It is not for general chat about the work, solutioning the work, or solutioning the impediments that come up. The Daily Scrum is a tightly time-boxed event because Scrum is about creating the conditions in which the team can focus on producing useful, valuable increments of work, not to keep them in meetings. Now, of course, solutioning discussions are needed, but if the need for such discussion becomes transparent in the Daily Scrum, then Tip 3, take solutioning discussions offline into a meet after. Only keep everybody in the Daily Scrum for as long as it takes to achieve the goal of the event. Where a solutioning conversation is needed, identify who needs to be in that conversation and keep it to just those who are needed, and make the commitment to have that conversation in a meet after. And on that point, tip 4, don't use the Daily Scrum as a substitute for continuous team interaction. If you're using the Daily Scrum to have conversation with your teammates about how to get the work done, you're misusing the Daily Scrum and probably not having enough conversations outside of it. Tip 5, if you use the 3 questions format, keep it concise. There is a misunderstanding that Scrum mandates the use of the 3-question format. It does not. Scrum only mandates that the team inspects its progress towards the sprint goal every day in a 15-minute time-boxed event and adapts its plan accordingly. The 3-question format that many people use in the Daily Scrum is a complementary practice that is nevertheless popular and invites everybody in the team to answer 3 questions. 1, what did you do yesterday? 2, what do you plan to do today? And 3, what impediments do you need help with? We'll talk about the pros and cons of this format in another video, but for now, if you're using that format, stick to those 3 questions and make the answers concise. I mean, don't cut corners. Inform, but you don't have to start telling a long story. Tip 6, stick to the time box. The reason the event is time boxed is to elicit focus on the event's goals and avoid drifting into other conversations. If you're regularly overrunning the time box, then explore that with your teammates and your Scrum Master. And in fact, tip 7, although the Daily Scrum is time boxed to 15 minutes, approach it as if you want to complete it in 10. That does not mean cut corners. However, if you proceed like you've only got 10 minutes, or that you've got a really hard stop just before the 15 minutes is up, you're much more likely to keep the Daily Scrum within the 15-minute time box. Tip 8, be present, be attentive, avoid distractions. Sometimes the Daily Scrum can disintegrate into people just talking with nobody really listening. Look, it's understandable. It happens. There's a lot of competition for our attention. But when that happens, all that's happening is that the whole team is just burning up 15 minutes and not getting the benefit of the Daily Scrum. As much as possible, have everybody put down all possible distractions and be truly present and attentive to the event. Now, that's much easier to do when everybody is in the same physical location. It's also much easier to do if people stand up, which again is not mandatory, that some people like to do. However, we're now living in a reality where a lot of people are working remotely and teams are spread across the globe. And that does make it more challenging to make sure everybody is being attentive. But it is quite important. Tip 9, attend with the intent of getting work done. Another way the Daily Scrum can disintegrate is to simply become a status meeting, where people just say the status of my work is. I urge everybody to attend the event with the intent of identifying ways of getting work into the done column. Be focused on getting work done, not just reporting status. And tip 10, reflect on whether the Daily Scrum is achieving its goals. Every so often, perhaps in the retrospective or in an Agile coaching session if you have an Agile coach, look at this. Ask everybody to reflect on these 3 questions. Number 1, after the Daily Scrum, am I happy I understand where we are relative to the sprint goal? Number 2, after the Daily Scrum, am I happy I understand what our perhaps revised plan is for achieving the sprint goal? And number 3, after the Daily Scrum, am I happy I understand what impediments were raised and who is helping to remove them? If everybody is a yes on that, you're probably well on track. Otherwise, examine that, possibly in the retrospective, and look for the incremental improvements that will move towards having better daily scrums. Now, if you're interested in scaling Agile practices, then check out this video here, which talks about the differences between Scaled Agile Framework 5.0 and 5.1. And don't forget to check us out at leantree.co.uk.